and themselves as Cincinnati, his spiritual descendants. In electing George Washington their first president, these charter members demonstrated their view of him as what the poet Byron would call him years later in his 1815 Ode to Napoleon Bonaparte, the Cincinnatus of the West. Like the noble Roman, Washington had left his farm, Mount Vernon, to rescue his country, and having rescued it, duly renounced the tyrant's power that could have been his, quietly returning instead to his plantation. This same early American habit of framing the new republic in the Roman past moved contemporaries to honor Washington with the title Pater Patriae. Later generations have translated this into the familiar Father of his country, but the original intent of the Latin, Father of the Fatherland, was intended explicitly to mirror an official honor conferred by the Roman Senate on the likes of Marcus Tullius Cicero, Julius Caesar, and Caesar Augustus for great and fundamental service to the nation. Thus Washington, as Pater Patriae, was the exact equivalent of the most virtuous leaders of Rome. No question depicting Washington in 12 tons of classical marble was hardly controversial. However, evoking the image of the Greek Zeus, rather than, say, the Roman Augustus, or even Cincinnatus himself, was profoundly disquieting. The trouble with incorporeal gods is their remoteness from the human beings who worship them. The Greeks never tolerated such. Their gods dwelled on Mount Olympus, not so very high above the rest of humanity, and, though immortal, were of flesh and blood. But the half-nudity that suited Zeus and delighted the Greeks would not do for Washington and the Americans who worshipped him. Many found the spectacle of a half-naked founding father offensive, and even more thought it hilarious. In 1843, the statue was exiled from the rotunda to the east lawn of the Capitol, where passers-by jeered that it depicted a discomfited Washington desperately grasping for his clothes, which were, at the time, on exhibit at the Patent Office several blocks to the north. The statue was moved indoors to the Smithsonian Institution in 1908, remaining in the old castle until 1964, when it was moved to the second floor of the just-completed Museum of History and Technology, now the National Museum of American History. It would be easy to write off mid-19th century objections to the Greenough sculpture as so much Victorian prudery, were it not for the fact that the work remains for us today, at the very least, incongruous. The father of his country, sandal-shod, bed-sheet wrapped, and bare of chest and shoulders? Something is still wrong with this picture. George Washington is at once the most familiar and most remote of the founding fathers. He remains today what he was in 1841, an icon more marble than flesh, and when the flesh is permitted to show through the marble, we are made uneasy. Unlike the ancient Greeks, we want our gods to be aloof. But there is more to this God's remoteness than our desire to have him so. Washington's early life lacks the rich anecdotal surface of the lives of, say, Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson. Doubtless it is for this reason that the best-known young George anecdote is wholly fictitious. The tale of how the Virginia lad decided to test his brand-new hatchet on one of his father's prized cherry trees, then admitted the crime to him, "Father, I cannot tell a lie," made Parson Weems's 1800 Life and Memorable Actions of George Washington a bestseller for generations. Here was a parable that managed to combine a humanizing flaw with what, in a child, was the precocious, if not superhuman, virtue of honesty. It was a brilliant piece of fantasy in that it satisfied a craving for homely humanity in Washington, yet did so while further burnishing, instead of tarnishing, the gleaming marble surface of his popular image. Perhaps it is high time to go beneath the surface and, without fabrication, search the character of George Washington the boy, the youth, and the young man for some clues to what made him what he was to become, in every sense, truly, the father of his country. Easier said than done. For Washington's first years present themselves as neither more nor less remarkable than those of any number of young men of the Southern planter class. Yet that class was itself remarkable. Euro-American civilization began abortively, in August 1585, in the place Sir Walter Raleigh named Virginia for his sovereign.